All right, guys, we're back, and you may recognize my next guest from the NFL Network. He's the co-host of Huddle and Flow podcast with Jim Trotter, and you can catch him on Twitter at Wyche89. But don't come with the lame wine recommendations. Steve Wyche, what's up, brother?
What's going on, Kenny, man? Glad to finally do this. We're trying to link for a minute.
Yeah,
so get it done.
It's been tough. You know, the draft just happened, and a lot of things been going down. A lot of news in the league, especially with quarterbacks wanting out, quarterbacks wanting to move, things happening. And we'll get into that in a minute. But with the draft over, I've seen a rise in a lot of black quarterbacks coming in. And, you know, you've been covering sports since '89. How have things changed since then?
Well, I mean, to me, it's all changed because it starts in like the high schools and the colleges. You know, back in the day, even in high school, the only time you saw a black quarterback is when they were running the option type of sets, right? When they were doing a lot of run-based stuff, like, okay, black quarterbacks couldn't throw the ball. So then it transferred to college, where you'd go to Oklahoma, where they had Jamel Holloway, or Colorado, or Arkansas, or some of those schools. You know, when I was playing at Missouri, it was all option football. And we played against black quarterbacks. Yeah. But just the whole thinking is you didn't run that type of offense in the NFL, so you go to the white quarterbacks who could throw it. Well, now with the 7-on-7 leagues and things like that, these coaches are taking their best athletes, their best players, and putting them at quarterback. And if they're black, white, Latino, Asian, doesn't matter. Their best athlete is that guy and he can throw it. Then they're starting them with these 7-on-7 leagues when these guys are 9, 10 years old. So it's just kind of the natural evolution and transition. But the biggest thing isn't the quarterback, it's the coaching. Yeah. And I've been saying this for years, even back in days of Michael Vick and things like that. So many coaches refuse to play black quarterbacks again because of the whole run scheme. Now coaches have evolved because college systems are running these wide open, no huddle, look to the sideline, get to play, one read, throw it offenses. So now in the NFL, that's what's going on to some degree, to a lesser degree, but they've opened it up. And so you have black quarterbacks playing in college. They play well in these schemes, and that's just kind of transferred to the NFL.
Yeah, and they're coming into the league, and they're coming in hot. I mean, we look at guys like Pat Mahomes, who's taken over the league by storm, Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, to name a few. You know, as we look at the draft, you know, we're seeing, like I said, we're seeing a rise in black quarterbacks. One of the things that stood out to me this year was that, you know, with all the attention that was put on HBCUs, there weren't any players drafted from HBCUs. And I saw that, you know, Deion Sanders spoke about it, and you as a Howard alum, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
It didn't surprise me. In fact, this was somewhat expected because, okay, think about it. COVID hit last spring. So these HBCUs had no spring practices, anything for these scouts to come see in the spring. Then every HBCU just about canceled their fall season. Right. The ones that did decide to play, and that's not all of them, like my alma mater, Howard, played 2 games this spring, both against Delaware State. That was it. Yeah. So the SWAC, where Deion coached at Jackson State, and then Grambling and Southern and those schools, they played a conference schedule, and their games went right up until like the weekend before the draft. So there wasn't a lot of tape. There weren't, again, a lot of eyeballs to see, because as you know, a guy from his sophomore to his junior year might grow 15 pounds and develop. Well, no one got to see him. No one got to see that. So next year, hopefully with more games, because now they're on a regular schedule, spring ball, fall ball, with more attention that Deion is bringing to Jackson State. Now Eddie George, former NFL running back, is going to Tennessee State, and maybe Marshall Faulk is going to coach Southern. They've got connections, right? They've got the direct pipeline to NFL scouts, to NFL coaches, where they can say, hey, look, you might want to give this guy a look-see. Plus, I'm part of a group with the Black College Football Hall of Fame. We're putting on a Legacy Bowl in February. And this is like the HBCU version of the Senior Bowl, in terms of there will be a run-up of practices where every scout from the NFL, XFL, CFL can attend. Then we have the All-Star Game, which we broadcast on the NFL Network, that February 19th. So it's the weekend after the Super Bowl. So you've got, you know, the East-West game, the Senior Bowl before the game, Super Bowl, and then our game, which kicks off combine season. So it basically gives the NFL, Kenny, and these teams no excuses to not have information on these kids.
That's exciting. And that kind of took me into my next question. Knowing the Raiders have always had tremendous success with, players from HBCUs. We had George Atkinson, Willie Brown, Henry Lawrence, to name a few, and most recently Marquette King and Brandon Parker. Seeing coaches, guys like Coach Prime, guys like Eddie George, guys like Marshall Faulk who are coming into that, I do think it's going to give them more opportunity. And I love to see what the media has done. And I think that you and Jim do a great job of shedding that light on it. And I think that that's one of the things I appreciate with the NFL Network is that you guys really elevate the diverse voices. You guys really do that. What are some of the things, aside from what you guys are planning on doing in February, what are some of the things that you're doing to highlight some diverse voices coming forward?
Well, I mean, look, a part of it also the Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic. Okay, that'll be played in September. I believe it's September in Canton, Ohio, where Tennessee State is playing Grambling, right? That's going to be broadcast on the NFL Network. So here's a reason to give some eyes. But now what we're really doing is we're giving some of these coaches, when you've got Doug Williams, who coached at Morehouse, who coached at Grambling, who co-founded Black College Football Hall of Fame, we're having them on our air more often. We're doing things to keep the conversations out there, not just with HBCU football players, but historically Black colleges and universities as a whole. I'm an HBCU graduate after spending 2 years at the University of Missouri. Jim Trotter's an HBCU graduate. Stan Verrett's an HBCU graduate. We have so many people in the media industry where now we can push. Yeah. Hey, you went to Spelman, you went to NCANT, push, mention it, because there's just a lot of people. I grew up in Missouri. Right, there's only one HBCU in Missouri. That's Lincoln University down in Jefferson City, Missouri. Most HBCUs are in the Southeast. So a lot of people from New York or LA or Oakland don't really know much about it. Those schools don't have recruiting budgets to recruit even students, yet alone athletes. So it takes voices like ours, seeing the Vice President of the United States who went to Howard, saying you can get the same type of education, if not better, at an HBCU is that you can get at a Cornell or someplace like that. Plus, the environment might be a little bit more friendly. And for people like me, I never grew up around Black people. I grew up well out in the suburbs of St. Louis. I was pretty much it for the most part. So to have that experience, especially after going to Missouri, University of Missouri for 2 years, where there are very few Black students, it was a game changer for me. It made me a man. It made me recognize a lot of things I didn't know about. And so that's what we as the media have to do. And proponents of historically Black college and university education, have to keep on pushing. And you're seeing a renaissance in HBCUs and people applying, people getting accepted, grade point averages having to be a little more competitive to get in. So things are working. The word is starting to get out.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot more people that want to, that want to experience that want to have more, that want to do more. As we talk about diversity and we talk about diversity around the league and everything, obviously the league already had the Rooney Rule. And that was something that I always kind of looked at, like as a Raider fan, it was something that, we never really needed because of Al Davis and his history. But looking at the new rules that came out, I believe it's incentives for hiring a minority. What are your thoughts on that?
They took pretty much the incentives away. Before they were proposing like, hey, if you promote or hire, you can get an extra back end compensatory pick. And people were like, no, then you're trying to reward people for what they should be doing.
Right.
I mean, that's like patting a single father on the back for watching his kid for 3 days a week when he should be doing that.
Right.
Right. So now what they are trying to do is, they are pushing more, saying you have to interview more than one diversity candidate for any job in coaching, upper management in the NFL and with teams. So because, the studies have found that if you just interview one person of color or one woman, it's not going to change anything. With two or more, you're like, hey, now I'm starting to see something. That said, still hasn't changed the minds. The only thing, you can put all the rules in place that you want. If you are dealing with narrow minds that don't want to be expanded, there's nothing you can do. And we're continuing to see it when it comes to coaching. Now, we did see some Black general managers get hired. Terry Fontenot in Atlanta, Brad Holmes, and Detroit, Martin Mayhew getting another shot with Washington. So there's a start because they are diversifying their coaching staffs and their personnel staffs. And, that's a start. But now let's see it again. Transition to the coaches where guys like Todd Bowles and Eric Bieniemy and so many other very qualified coaches of color, and not just Black coaches, Latino coaches, Asian coaches, get their opportunity to show what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, look, I want to see Eric Bieniemy get a job for a number of reasons. One of them is to get him out of the AFC West. But two, he is what he's done with that offense, what he's been able to do with Pat Mahomes, with Alex Smith even. I think that speaks volumes. And I think that he definitely is well deserving of a job. And I think one of the things that's frustrating is whenever you have a minority who's up for a position, it's always the quote unquote character issue, or somebody will find a way for something. And it would be nice to get away from that. As we look at this, as we look at, some of these diverse candidates and things like that, actually, one thing that stands out to me is Jim Trotter's piece yesterday on the Raiders and talking about John Gruden, doing this full rebuild of the team and destroying everything that happened and bringing in his guys and getting more time than most coaches would. Now, obviously, the legend of John Gruden supersedes him, but what are some other things other than Mark Davis? Obviously, what are some other reasons why John Gruden has gotten so many chances?
Well, look, first off, Mark Davis won him. He gave him a 10-year deal. It's guaranteed. 10-year, $100 million deal. He's got a honeymoon. He's got a grace period. And coming into a new stadium in a new city where the fans still have yet to get into a stadium to see a game, he had a couple years not to get it right because they alienated the fans in Oakland where they played, right? And now they went to Las Vegas last year and it didn't work. But when it comes to generating the fan base, if they win games this year, okay, it's all good. Everything is gravy. But Jim's piece was fantastic because in a results-oriented business, the results have not come. Free agency has been a disaster. It's been very hit and miss with the draft picks. And when you see how things were rolling for a while with the Raiders, when Jack Del Rio and Bill Musgrave had that offense rolling, when I'm talking to guys like DeMarcus Ware and Chris Harris of the Broncos, like, yo, man, we didn't know what to do when we faced them. And now teams are like, oh, the Raiders. Derek Carr played well last year, but the team didn't win. They lost games they had to have. There's just no identity. There's no clutch gene. John Gruden, no one's going to question his offensive coaching, but defensively, they're a nightmare. And how long are we going to say that? How long are you going to say that? Teams fix things. The Browns fix things, right? And so I hate it because I grew up loving the Raiders. And I think, as Jim pointed out in his column, the NFL is better with the Raiders because you love them or you hate them. But when they're relevant, we pay attention. And right now, nobody talking about the Raiders. Right. And that sucks. Because again, their history is much more meaningful to the NFL than what we're getting right now.
Yeah, and I think that the Raiders, they're talking about them, but I think that recently they haven't been talking very well. Obviously they had the tweet.
Why should they?
Exactly. And I tweeted out to what Jim said, and I said he's got very valid points. I think that there are some glaring issues that need to be fixed. So hopefully Gus Bradley can turn the defense around. But we look at historical drafts and we look at what the Raiders have done, and there's been some really big question marks. What are some things that you could see this team doing? Obviously, this team is built offensively, but where can this team turn the corner?
They've got to make stops. Look at that Dolphins game last year. They had to have at the end of the year. Ryan Fitzpatrick comes in and looks like Dan Marino. He just moves them up and down the field, and they blow that game. Offense can't get first downs at the end of games. And that's the thing. These things go hand in hand. We blame the defense a lot, but in tight games, if an offense can get a first down here or there and not punt the ball.
Yeah.
That works. So it works hand in hand, but that was terrible. And it's just that when I say there's no clutch gene, they win games, but they haven't won the game. Like they haven't done it. They get you excited and then, they don't. So they got to get defense that takes the ball away. Right now, teams move the ball in the NFL. That number one defense based on yards allowed is a garbage stat. It is scoring, and it is, defensive scoring defense and taking the ball away. You take the ball away, you give your offense a short field, you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so that's what the Raiders have not done. And that's what they have to do. And the issue is the Chiefs. Okay, they get rid of their offensive line. Oh, my goodness. Oh, next thing you know, they're loaded up on the offensive line. They get Orlando Brown. They go out. They bring Kyle Long out of retirement. They do some things to get it going. The Chargers making moves.
Mm-hmm.
They got a quarterback. They draft Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern. They're starting to put it together. You just look at the division, man.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, Denver did some interesting things. They get Teddy to back up Drew Lock. Kansas City. Chargers, once again, doing things in the offseason, which never really hasn't translated.
Right.
But they look like they're getting better. And you look at the Raiders like, are they getting better? Are they spinning their wheels? We just don't know. And that's because there just really doesn't seem that foundation. But in my heart of hearts, I am pulling for them to get it together because that stadium, Raider Nation, again, the NFL has a whole different gear when the silver and black are rocking and rolling.
Yeah, and you see, I mean, we saw it in 2016 where, the league was on fire. The newsreels were on fire. Everybody was talking about it. And I think that even earlier last season, before the collapse, I think that, there was excitement there. And then after the KC loss, I think things kind of fell by the wayside. And I think that's one of the biggest things that Gruden's got to do is figure out how to not have those slips in the second half of the season. And then also, hopefully, like I said, hopefully he's got something under control with the defense and adding in Gus Bradley, because I think that keeping Paul Guenther was way too long. You stay in that relationship way too long. As I look around, I'm gonna ask a couple more questions on this one, but we see a lot of news with quarterbacks, right? We see a lot of news with quarterbacks wanting out. There was the initial reports of Russell Wilson, and they ended up getting things figured out. Then there was the DeShaun Watson, and then now there's Aaron Rodgers. What do you think about these reports? And is it more of a smokescreen, or what do you think?
Oh, it's real. What we're starting to see with quarterbacks, because they're making $32 and $33 million a year, is what we see in the NBA. When star players are like, yeah, I'm done. I'm not playing here. James Harden, I'm not playing for this owner. Okay, we got to get him gone.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't have him sink what we're doing. So you're starting to see a little bit of that flex because of the position, the money they're making, because 1 year and they're generationally wealthy.
Right.
When you make $33 million a year, unless you're a numbskull, you're going to be okay. And so,
Mr. Jamarcus.
Well, like I said, I will leave the adjective I hung out there, the pronoun I'll leave out there. But it's, I think part of it is these guys are starting to see what's going on. And Tom Brady didn't help things with him going down to Tampa and them getting him Gronk out of retirement, getting Antonio Brown, getting Leonard Fournette, and saying, oh, we can build a team this way. We've drafted well. We've got Devin White. We've got Levante David. We got JPP. Mm-hmm. We got Ndamukong Suh. But let's go get Tom some pieces. And then these dudes are sitting here, and their teams aren't doing that, in part because their contracts are so significant. But at the same time, they've had opportunities. Why couldn't they go get Gronk? Why couldn't they go get Leonard Fournette? But they didn't. So they're seeing these other teams do that. They're seeing Russell Wilson has seen the Rams go get Matthew Stafford. Right? They're seeing moves being made, and their teams are just like, yeah, we're going to give it the old try again because we're close. And That's how come I think you're starting to see more of it with the DeShaun Watson situation before the other stuff popped up. It's just that, okay, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? And then you're going to ask me for my opinion on the coaching and GM search. Then when I give it to you, you're going to completely dismiss me.
Yeah.
That's a whole respect issue. And I don't think he ever placed another down for the Texans.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that relationship, regardless of whatever else is going on the side, I think that relationship is completely frayed.
Yep.
Looking at the Aaron Rodgers situation, it's a very unique one because, you move up to draft Jordan Love last year. You've got Aaron Rodgers sitting there, and you look at historically, they did the same thing with Brett Favre. They got Aaron Rodgers, they have Brett Favre sitting there. Favre gets disgruntled. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Do you think Aaron's going to move this year? Or?
It's going to be the story of the offseason. I don't think they trade him, unless somebody offers up some insane package, which would be 22 and beyond draft picks. I don't think they trade him. I think it's going to be, if you don't want to play, you sit out, you retire. Then we can recoup some money from you, which gets even uglier when you think like that's what Calvin Johnson and the Lions went through, and that relationship is still frayed. He's going into the Hall of Fame this year, so that's 5 years later. So there's that damage. But look, Aaron's got the gravitas. Say, okay, I'll give you back $20 million, whatever it is. I'll go make that up in Jeopardy, State Farm commercials, and everything else. I'm good. I'm good. I don't need you. I just wanted my third MVP. So this is going to be an ugly stare down. And if you're the Packers, you got to say to yourself, well, we did draft this dude in the first round to take over for Aaron Rodgers. Let's accelerate that process because right now it's looking ugly. Yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see what happens because, Green Bay is not used to losing. They're not used to not having somebody not named Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre. So it's going to be something that I'll be watching. I know that you'll be talking about it.
Yes.
What do you got coming up? I know that you've got your podcast. So go ahead and plug that there. But what else do you have coming up?
Right now the Huddle and Flow podcast is on a hiatus. We're taking a little breather and we're just kind of re-energizing after a grind of a season. So, but that'll be back. And, we're going to come out with some cleanup hitters. That's what we do. We don't lay down bunt singles. We swing for the fences. So we got that coming up. Look, we got the schedule release coming out next week. That's always a big deal because then people can go buy tickets and do everything else, book hotel rooms and whatnot. And then these camps start. At some point, whether there's going to be mini camps. Those are mandatory. So we're kind of getting back to normal where we're getting out in the field and we're going to be able to cover the stuff. So we've got all of these things kind of going on, and then for me personally in June, we're inducting our class of 2021 Black College Football Hall of Fame class, which is loaded with some great players as always. And so we're just kind of getting back into the flow of it, but the NFL never slows down, Kenny. That we're in the news 365.
That's what I love about it. That's why I love the game. That's why I love to watch. And you guys do a great job. Steve, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come on with me. Love to have you on again, especially during the season if you can find that time. And shout out to you and everybody over at NFL Network.
Appreciate you, man. Let's get that Raider Nation rolling, bro.